Good evening, everyone. Tonight, we're stepping into a world where ancient stones whisper secrets, where stars are not just beautiful. They are maps, markers, perhaps even messages from something that came long before we did. You're sitting there, lights fading, and you get the strange sense that someone or something is looking back at you through the dark. You might not survive what comes next. So before you get too comfortable, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments. Where are you watching from, and what time is it right now? Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on a fan for some gentle noise, and let's begin tonight's journey. You shuffle slowly down the corridor of time, your footsteps echoing off ancient walls. A breeze brushes against your cheek like a breath from history itself. One question hangs in the air, almost too quiet to hear but impossible to ignore. If humans were never truly alone on Earth, then who was here before us? You imagine yourself standing in Egypt. The sand is warm beneath your feet, the sky burns red over the horizon, and in front of you, towering eternal, is the Great Pyramid of Giza. You blink, and suddenly you're in a jungle. Humid air presses against your skin, insects buzz around you, and through the vines, another pyramid. This time you're at Tikal. It looks almost the same. From the desert of North Africa to the rainforests of Central America, pyramids rise like stone question marks, challenging everything we think we know. The similarity isn't just in the shape. It's in the way they're built, the way they're aligned, the numbers they reflect, and the stories they carry. How could two civilizations, separated by an ocean and millennia, build such eerily similar monuments? You take a deep breath. Something doesn't feel right. It feels too similar. Conventional scholars will tell you this is coincidence. Pyramids are structurally stable, wide base, narrow top. Obvious choice. But you notice something else. Why are they aligned to Sirius? Why do their steps mirror lunar cycles? Why do both cultures describe gods descending from the sky? In Egypt, you stand between the three pyramids of Giza and realize they're laid out in the exact same pattern as the stars of Orion's belt. Later, you scan a map of Tikal and see the same pattern again. Coincidence? Scientists still debate whether this is a lucky fluke or evidence of a shared cosmic awareness that ancient humans shouldn't have had without telescopes. A voice buzzes softly in your head, like an old radio signal cutting through space. We were here, long before you knew how to write. You shiver just a little, then you laugh. Maybe it's the coffee. Maybe it's your imagination. But then you remember, in 2013, researchers mapped global energy grids and discovered that the largest pyramids on Earth all line up along the same invisible belt, Giza.
Teotihuacan, Angkor Wat.
Did ancient builders know something we didn't? How could they? Egyptian legends speak of sky beings who taught them the stars. The Maya told stories of Kukulkan, a feathered serpent god who flew down from the heavens, taught them everything, then disappeared, promising to return. Across continents, the same theme appears. Beings from the sky. You continue walking through this twilight between fact and myth. Walls shift around you like projections. Machu Picchu flickers into view, then Stonehenge, then submerged pyramids near Yonaguni. They're not isolated. They're a network, a planetary system built by civilizations supposedly unconnected. And now you're thinking it. I know you are. Okay. Here comes the alien theory. But stop, ask yourself, if you lived 4,000 years ago with no satellites, no global maps, no advanced tools, how would you build Giza? How would you align it with true north to within 1/10 of a degree? Some have a theory. It's old, fringe, often ridiculed, but strangely compelling. Maybe someone visited, not to invade, not to rule, just to observe, to teach, and then disappear, like a meteor skimming Earth's atmosphere. You smirk and glance at the darkness beside you. If you're real, you whisper, why don't you show up again? And for just a second, you swear. You see a green light flicker on the distant horizon. You're still standing in that jungle clearing, half in Tikal, half in Giza, and the sense of déjà vu hasn't worn off. It wraps around your spine like a slow, twisting chill. How could two civilizations, with oceans and centuries between them, design such similar monuments? The pyramids aren't just lookalikes. They breathe the same architectural logic. Step-like platforms rising toward the heavens. Hidden chambers. Narrow passageways that align with stars. Even the angles of their sides whisper the same silent language. You take a step forward, crunching under the weight of millennia. In Egypt, the pyramids rise from the sand like cosmic staircases, perfectly aligned with cardinal directions. In Central America, at Chichen Itza and Tikal, they do the same, built with an uncanny understanding of the solstices, equinoxes, and lunar cycles. You can't help but wonder, were they trying to talk to the sky? Here's the thing. When you look close enough, these similarities stop looking coincidental and start to feel organized. Both cultures embedded math into their stone. Numbers that mirror Earth's orbit, planetary movements, even light speed centuries before telescopes, calculators, or Wi-Fi memes. It's like someone handed them the cheat codes to the cosmos. You touch the stone, cool and silent. Deep within Giza, the Great Pyramid's perimeter multiplied by 43,200 gives you Earth's equatorial circumference. That's not some random math magic, that's geodesy. At Teotihuacan, the layout reflects the solar system, with the Sun pyramid in the center and orbits echoing outward. That's astronomy. Academic debates rage on. Scientists still argue whether these measurements were intentional or simply happy accidents. But your gut says otherwise. Too much precision. Too much symbolism. Too many stars. A breeze stirs the air again, and you hear something that sounds like chanting, just beyond the trees. You follow it. In the heart of the Maya world, pyramids weren't tombs. They were living calendars. El Castillo at Chichen Itza has 91 steps on each side. Add the platform on top. That's 365. You don't need a smartwatch when your architecture is the clock. And during the spring and fall equinoxes, a serpent-shaped shadow slithers down the staircase. It's not just dramatic. It's precise. Who designs shadows that crawl with seasonal rhythm? You glance up. Above your head, stars spin slowly. In Giza, the shafts of the Great Pyramid point not at random, but toward Orion, Sirius, and Draco. The Maya, too, revered Orion's belt. Is it coincidence that these three stars seem burned into our deepest myths? Or are they breadcrumbs? You pause at the top of a Maya staircase, wind on your face. You imagine a priest in feathers standing where you are now, arms raised toward Venus, the morning star, the war star. They tracked it obsessively with accuracy down to the day. You don't track something like that unless it means something more. Maybe someone told them to look. One theory you've probably heard is cultural diffusion, the idea that ancient travelers shared knowledge across the globe. But here's the catch. There's no trace of transatlantic contact between Egypt and Mesoamerica during pyramid-building times. No Egyptian jewelry in Maya tombs. No papyrus scrolls in Central America. Nothing. So how do you explain two civilizations with no proven connection building mathematically perfect structures that echo each other's purpose? Another theory? Independent innovation. Civilizations just came to similar conclusions based on similar needs. But again, you're staring at identical architectural solutions and identical sky-based symbology and identical myths of sky gods. That's a lot of coincidences. You lean against the cool stone and think, what if the pyramids weren't meant for humans at all? What if they were built for observation? Like lighthouses, like landing pads. You chuckle, half serious, half not. But even that idea isn't new. In 1968, author Eric von Daniken stirred global debate by suggesting that ancient aliens visited Earth and left behind structures as messages. He was laughed at, and yet his book sold millions. Why? Maybe because deep down we want to believe someone bigger is out there. Still, mainstream archaeologists roll their eyes. They say there's no solid evidence, no artifacts, no tools, no shipwrecks from space. They argue that underestimating ancient human ingenuity is insulting. But it doesn't feel like an insult when you're standing here, barefoot on ancient stairs, staring at two pyramids that could be twins, built by people who never met. You listen. The jungle hums like a giant heart. And in that moment, something clicks. These aren't just structures. They're invitations. Both Egypt and the Maya left behind puzzles, star maps, mythologies wrapped in geometry. Not for worship, but for awakening. Your flashlight flickers. You feel it again, that sensation that someone's watching you. But there's no one there. Only shadows. You whisper into the night. What were you trying to show us? And somewhere, behind the trees, a light blinks once, then disappears. Your steps slow as you descend deeper into the stone corridors of memory. The air grows thick, almost metallic, and somewhere in the distance, water drips like a ticking clock. You're inside now, inside the pyramid. But whose? The walls around you shift. One moment, it's limestone from Giza, etched with rows of hieroglyphs. The next, it's volcanic stone from Palenque, covered in swirling Maya glyphs. You run your fingers across the surface. It feels warm, as if the memory of ancient hands still lingers. And then you see it, a carving. Not a king, not a god, but a star map. You blink. Is it possible you're looking at a cosmic coordinate system? Historians agree. Both the Egyptians and the Maya were obsessed with the sky. That's mainstream. What's less discussed is how detailed their observations were. So precise that even modern software can verify their alignments. From Giza, shafts line up with Orion's belt in 2500 BCE. At Uxmal, pyramids align with Venus's cycle down to the hour. It's not just sky watching, the sky encoding. You keep walking and suddenly, you're standing before a wall completely covered in celestial symbols. Sun disks, star clusters, eclipse cycles. The Dresden Codex, one of the few surviving Maya texts, predicted solar eclipses centuries ahead. Meanwhile, Egyptian star clocks measured the movement of decans, groups of stars that marked each hour of the night. The level of knowledge is staggering. Scientists still debate whether ancient civilizations independently achieved this kind of astronomy, or whether they inherited it. Some say it was observation over generations. Others suggest something more taught. You squint at one particular glyph, a swirling spiral next to a figure with elongated limbs pointing skyward. It reminds you of the Dogon tribe in Mali, who claimed knowledge of Sirius B, an invisible companion star only confirmed by telescopes in the 20th century. The Dogon say they learned it from beings called the Namo, who came down in a spinning vessel. You smile. Just a coincidence, right? But that's the thing. There are so many coincidences, like the fact that both Egyptian and Maya temples weren't just places of worship, they were time machines, designed to capture sunlight on solstices, or to echo footsteps, or to trap the wind into whistling harmonics. They were instruments tuned to the sky, the earth, and something in between. You pass a corridor where symbols flicker as if they're pulsing. You imagine a priest walking this very path, whispering incantations under his breath, calling out to something in the heavens. Not in fear, but in recognition. And that's when it hits you. Maybe they weren't just looking up to the sky. Maybe they were expecting a response. In Egypt, the Zep Tepi, the first time, refers to an era when the gods walked among men, and knowledge flowed freely. The Maya speak of previous worlds, destroyed and reborn, each under different stars. The idea of cyclical time repeats in both traditions. Time isn't linear, it's returning. You pass a chamber with strange acoustics. Every footstep echoes in a perfect pitch. In Chavin, in Peru, the Temple of Lanzan amplifies whispers across great distances. At Saqqara, deep inside the step pyramid complex, the resonance of chanting travels like it's meant for someone with more sensitive hearing than ours. Not all sound is meant for human ears. You chuckle again just to keep the mood light. Maybe we're just overanalyzing, you say out loud. The silence doesn't respond. But you notice a detail. The Maya word for star is ek, and many glyphs show stars with trails, like comets or spacecraft. Egyptian art also shows boats with wings, often sailing not on water, but in the air above. Scholars interpret this as metaphor. But what if it's not? What if they were being literal? You step into a chamber that feels older than the earth itself. The walls slope inward. The ceiling stretches up into blackness. Something about the angles makes your skin prickle. These weren't designed for comfort or aesthetics, they were designed for something else. Transmission? Containment? In 1993, a robotics team sent a camera into one of Giza's unexplored shafts. What they found? A sealed door. Behind it, another shaft. Another door. Still unopened. What are they hiding? Some claim the pyramids were power plants, resonant structures that converted Earth's vibrations into usable energy. The materials, limestone, granite, dolomite, each conduct or insulate in specific ways. The layout resembles a circuit board. The king's chamber? A capacitor? No, the experts say it's just a tomb, just a symbolic monument. But you haven't seen a single mummy pulled from any major Egyptian pyramid. Let that sit with you. You rest your hand on the stone and ask yourself, is history hiding something? Or are we just not ready to hear it? The joke writes itself. If aliens built the pyramids, where are they now? But maybe that's the wrong question. Maybe they're not gone. Maybe they're waiting. And just maybe, they're listening. The night thickens around you, pressing in like a velvet curtain. And still, you move forward. Somewhere deep in your bones, you feel it now. You're not just walking through history. You're walking through something older. Something watching. You emerge into a wider space. Your eyes adjust to the low light, and there it is, the Great Pyramid of Giza looming once again. Not just a mountain of stone, but a monument of precision. Its base nearly a perfect square. Its sides aligned within a fraction of a degree to true north. And its proportions? A riddle of pi and the golden ratio embedded in limestone. Built thousands of years ago, allegedly without wheels, pulleys, or iron tools, the mainstream narrative says slaves dragged the blocks. Endless manpower. Ramps, levers, sweat, blood. But then you see it. A single stone, over 70 tons, lifted 40 feet into the air. Even with today's technology, we would struggle to do that cleanly. And Giza has hundreds of these. You pause, suddenly aware of how small your hands are. How fragile. Could human hands alone have done this? And if not, whose hands did? Here's a fun historical fact. The largest stones at Baalbek, Lebanon, weigh over 1,000 tons. That's the weight of a commercial airplane. And yet there they sit, precisely cut, stacked, and leveled. Archaeologists still debate whether the site predates the Romans, and whether they inherited an already impossible foundation. Again, no wheels, no cranes, no laser levels. Just math, muscle, and maybe something more. Scientists still argue whether these feats of engineering are evidence of unknown ancient technology, or simply lost knowledge. But one thing's clear. There's a gap in the story. Something's missing. You close your eyes and hear the sound of stone scraping stone. Slow, methodical. It's not just construction, it's orchestration. Almost like programming. Because here's the strange part. Many of these ancient sites use the same numbers. Giza's height times 43,200 equals Earth's polar circumference. The distance between Teotihuacan and Giza? Proportional to planetary geometry. These patterns aren't coincidence. They're data. What were these builders trying to encode? You step into the king's chamber, breath held. It's silent, perfectly rectangular, lined with granite so dense it rings like a bell when tapped. Some say this room amplifies energy. Others say it's an initiation chamber. But the truth? No one knows. Now picture this. You're lying in the chamber, and suddenly, the walls hum. Low, resonant. You feel it in your teeth, in your chest. Is this music? Is this memory? Theories flood your brain: harmonic resonance, sound levitation, piezoelectricity. Granite is quartz-rich. Quartz vibrates under pressure. Combine that with water tunnels beneath the pyramid and certain magnetic anomalies, and you've got something. A battery? A beacon? A transmitter? In the Andes, similar theories surround the stone fortress of Sacsayhuaman. Enormous interlocking stones fit together so tightly that not even a razor blade can pass between them.
No mortar.
just perfect geometry. Some researchers believe sound may have played a role, using frequency to soften stone or to levitate it. The idea sounds crazy, until you realize ancient legends in both Egypt and the Andes describe priests who sang stones into the sky. You raise your eyebrows. You weren't ready for that one, were you? A joke pops into your mind. Aliens don't build things anymore. They just wait for us to rediscover them, and then laugh. You smirk to yourself. But the silence in this place? It doesn't feel like absence. It feels like expectation. You back out of the chamber and look up. The pyramid's apex is missing a flat top. Some believe it was once capped with a golden or crystalline point.
A conductor?
A symbol? No one knows. What we do know is that a perfect pyramid focuses energy at its center. The missing tip? Like a radio missing its antenna. What was it for? In the jungles of Belize at Caracol, another pyramid stands, built in layers, echoing the Maya belief in the 13 heavens. Each level symbolized a different world. Climb high enough and you're closer to the gods. The logic feels the same in Egypt. The higher you go, the closer you get to something else. You begin to wonder if all pyramids are the same story told in different languages. If maybe the point wasn't worship at all, but contact. Contact with what? The ancient texts are vague. Gods from the sky, serpents with wings, beings of light. They descend, they teach, they vanish. It's a pattern repeated in Sumer in India in the Pacific Islands. Some arrive in fire, others in silence. And here's the weirdest part. They always seem to know where the stars are. You stare out across the sands, imagining what the world looked like 10,000 years ago. No cities.
No noise.
Just stars. And maybe, just maybe, something landing in the dark. The skeptics scoff, of course. You're romanticizing the past, they say. Our ancestors were clever, not magical. And maybe they're right. Maybe you just want to believe in something bigger than mud bricks and elbow grease. But the question won't leave you alone. If humans didn't build these things entirely on their own, who did? The jungle air thickens around you again, humid and electric. You're no longer in Egypt. Vines curl at your feet. Parrots shriek above your head. Welcome back to Tikal. You're standing before a pyramid that seems to rise straight out of the earth itself. Its stones are dark, mossy, and strangely alive, almost as if they remember what they've witnessed. The air smells of old fire, crushed leaves, and time. You run your hand along a block of limestone. A sudden chill moves through your fingers. You're not sure if it's your imagination, or if the pyramid just whispered to you. This is Temple I, the Temple of the Great Jaguar, one of the most iconic structures in the ancient Maya city of Tikal. But it's not just the beauty or size of the temple that haunts you. It's what it's pointing at. Every Maya temple was more than architecture. It was a message, a clock, compass, a warning. Tikal. Many of the temples are aligned with the rising and setting of celestial bodies, not just the sun and moon, but Venus. The Maya tracked Venus obsessively, not casually, not mythologically, scientifically. They mapped its cycle so accurately that it still astonishes modern astronomers. And they weren't alone. The ancient Sumerians did it. So did the Babylonians. And the Egyptians? They venerated Sirius, another bright star, and structured entire festivals and calendars around its rising. You tilt your head upward. Venus isn't just a pretty light in the night sky. To ancient people, it was active, powerful, sometimes benevolent, sometimes destructive. The Maya called it the Star of War. They launched attacks only when Venus rose in specific positions. Who teaches a civilization to wait for a planet before going to war? Scientists still debate whether the Maya inherited this knowledge through long-term observation or whether there was an early burst of astronomical insight from some lost source. Because even if you had centuries to study Venus, how would you know when its inferior conjunction occurs, hidden behind the sun? And still, the codexes got it right. You sit down on the moss-covered stairs, the stone damp beneath you. It's quiet now, and in that quiet you begin to hear it. The strange hum of the jungle fading into the rhythmic chant of history. The Maya saw time as cycles. Everything repeats. Everything returns. Even gods. They believed in worlds that rose and fell. Not metaphorical ones, literal cycles of creation and destruction. We're said to be in the fifth world right now. The previous ones ended in fire, or flood, or skyfall. You close your eyes and imagine the end of one world. What did it sound like? What did it look like? Maybe a meteor. Maybe a spaceship. You open your eyes. There's a carving beside you. A stylized serpent with feathered wings, mouth open wide. Kukulkan, or Quetzalcoatl, depending on which culture you ask. A god. A teacher. A being who came from the sky and eventually vanished, promising to return. Sound familiar? Egypt has Thoth. Sumer had Enki. Ancient India had sky chariot deities, descending on Vimanas with fire and thunder. The Polynesians? Beings of light who came from the Pleiades. Different names. Same pattern. The figure arrives. Shares knowledge. Leaves. The glyphs in Tikal don't just describe rituals or kings. Some describe the sky. Patterns of light. Explosions. Objects that burned without fire and flew without wings. Of course, scholars say these are poetic metaphors. Visionary language. Religious ecstasy. But you're starting to wonder, because the Maya were not vague people. They tracked planetary motion, lunar cycles, eclipses, all in stone. So why would they suddenly switch to metaphor when describing burning disks in the sky? You laugh nervously. Maybe they were just being dramatic. You whisper to the empty air. But the thought doesn't leave you. What if these weren't metaphors at all? What if these were records? In the 1940s, a Maya tablet was discovered in Copan, depicting what some interpret as a man seated inside a machine, controls in front of him, flames below, streams behind. That's just symbolic, archaeologists say. It's meant to show his journey to the afterlife. But your mind asks a different question. What if he wasn't dying? What if he was launching? The same interpretation has been applied to the famous sarcophagus lid of King Pakal in Palenque. At first glance, it looks like a ruler descending into the underworld. But stare long enough, and it looks like a pilot in a cockpit, hands on controls, feet on pedals, surrounded by tubes and flames. Mainstream science calls that pareidolia, your brain seeing patterns that aren't there. But scientists still argue whether that carving was ever meant to be funerary at all. And if it's not, then what is it? You climb the steps of the temple slowly, your breath steadying. The jungle stretches around you in all directions. You wonder if one night thousands of years ago, someone else stood exactly where you are now, staring at the same sky, watching something descend or ascend. And here's the twist. We've only explored a fraction of Tikal. A few temples excavated. Dozens still buried under trees and time. Who knows what's hiding beneath the roots? You look down at your feet. The stone is warm. It always is, just before something wakes up. The stone beneath your feet hums with the weight of time, and for a moment you forget where you are. Is this still Tikal? Or Giza? Or somewhere else entirely? The deeper you go, the less it matters. These places begin to blur, as if they were never truly separate to begin with. Because now you're standing in front of something that shouldn't exist. A monolith. A single block of stone. Taller than a bus and weighing more than a blue whale. You reach out and touch it. It's smooth, cold, perfect. This is where the mystery shifts from the poetic to the impossible. You've heard of the obelisk of Aswan, over 1,000 tons, carved from granite, abandoned in place. Or the trilithon stones at Baalbek. Or the base blocks of the Temple of the Sun at Ollantaytambo in Peru. Each time the same question echoes. How? Not why. That's easy. Monument, worship, power. But how do you lift a 1,000-ton stone without advanced machinery? How do you fit stones together with no mortar, no gaps, no room for error? These aren't questions of belief. They're questions of physics. And scientists still debate whether ancient civilizations had tools or techniques we simply haven't discovered yet. Or if there's something more profound we're missing entirely. You kneel beside one of the blocks, run your hand along the edge. It isn't rough or uneven. It's laser smooth, precision you'd expect from modern machining. But this is thousands of years old. Could humans have done this alone? Conventional answers suggest copper chisels, sand, water, patience. And maybe that's true for smaller stones. But this is different. Some theories whisper about lost technologies. Sonic levitation, vibration manipulation, or frequency-based cutting. Others go further, suggesting outside influence. You glance upward, half expecting to see a spacecraft hovering. Instead, you see stars, bright, clear, and perfectly arranged. And that's when it hits you. Maybe these monuments weren't just expressions of greatness. Maybe they were invitations, coordinates, markers, like giant galactic QR codes waiting to be scanned from above. You think of Pumapunku in Bolivia, H-shaped stones carved with machine-like grooves, interlocking channels, and symmetry that defies logic. Even today, engineers struggle to replicate the design using hand tools. So how was it done? You hear footsteps behind you, but when you turn, nothing. Just the quiet rustle of wind brushing past ancient stone. You speak softly. What were you building? No answer. But then you remember legends. Across the world, myths speak of floating stones. In Egypt, priests were said to use chants to lift heavy blocks. In Tibet, travelers told of drums that made stones fly. In the Andes, stories linger of high-pitched whistles guiding stones through the air like feathers. Sounds like fantasy until you realize that sound is vibration. And vibration is energy. And energy, when focused, can move mountains. Literally. One experiment in the 1960s used high-frequency sound to levitate small objects. It worked. On a lab bench. For a pebble. But what if the principle scales? What if, long ago, someone figured out how to harmonize sound with stone? You're about to laugh. Until you remember this. Many ancient sites are built atop natural resonant chambers. Underground cavities. Aquifers. Places where energy flows amplifies. The pyramids in Egypt, right above a water table. The temples at Teotihuacan, laced with mica and electrical insulator. Coincidence? Scientists still argue whether these alignments with natural energy sources are intentional or just geographically convenient. But you're beginning to think. Nothing about these places is accidental. You place your ear against the stone. It's not just cold. It's alive. You can hear it. Deep, slow vibrations, like the heartbeat of a sleeping giant. You pull back. Still vibrating. Still humming. Still remembering. And suddenly you realize, maybe these structures weren't built to last. Maybe they were built to wait. A joke drifts into your head. If aliens gave us advanced tools, maybe they also gave us a terrible warranty, because we sure lost the instruction manual. You smirk, but the thought lingers. What if this technology, if we can call it that, was never meant to be ours? What if it was borrowed? Or worse, stolen? You remember the story of the Ark of the Covenant. A glowing box that killed those who touched it. A voice that thundered instructions. A machine? A transmitter? Or just another echo of something we forgot how to understand? Because here's the quiet terror. Maybe we used to know. Maybe the knowledge was never alien. Maybe it was ours and we lost it. Floods. Fires. Empires collapsed. Libraries burned. What survives? Stone. Stone doesn't forget. And so these pyramids, these temples, these impossible blocks, they remember what we don't. They wait. They hum. They echo frequencies we no longer hear, calling out to the stars in a language that once made perfect sense. You stand up slowly, and far above you, a single star pulses in and out, once, then again. Was that a plane? Or an answer? The pulse in the sky fades, and for a moment, everything is still. You hold your breath, unsure whether you just witnessed something monumental, or just a trick of tired eyes and hopeful imagination. But the feeling won't go away. You're being watched, not in a threatening way, in a clinical way, like something is observing, measuring, recording. You whisper, "Who's out there?" Silence. But not emptiness. It's a listening silence. The ancients had a word for this. In Egypt, the gods were not distant. They were present. Walking, teaching, watching. The first god kings, according to legend, were not born here. They came from the sky. You think of Osiris, whose soul was said to travel among the stars. Of Thoth, god of knowledge, who gave humanity writing and numbers. And across the ocean, you think of Kukulkan, the feathered serpent, who descended from the heavens bringing law and agriculture, and then vanished in the direction of the stars. They always leave. In both civilizations, these beings came down from above in times of chaos. They organized humanity, brought order, then disappeared, promising to return. It's almost too symmetrical. Scientists still debate whether these stories are metaphor or memory. But either way, they repeat across continents. In Sumer, the Anunnaki descend from the heavens. In India, celestial beings fly vimanas. In the Pacific Islands, gods arrive in flying canoes. In Dogon lore, fish-like visitors descended in spinning ships, told stories of Sirius, then dove back into the water or into space. You start to feel like you're reading variations of the same novel, translated over and over by cultures separated by oceans, yet somehow retelling the same encounter. A being, a descent, a gift, a departure. But what if it wasn't just mythology? You walk past a row of carved figures on the wall. Some have animal heads. Some have elongated skulls. One has eyes too large for a human face, limbs too thin, fingers too long. It looks off. Not divine, not demonic, just different. Modern eyes call this symbolism, or art, or exaggeration. But your brain, wired by evolution to recognize threats, hesitates. Something in you knows this shape. You've seen it before. A child's drawing of an alien. A gray, big head, skinny body, wide black eyes. You blink. The carving is gone. Or maybe it was never there. Was that your mind? Or memory? Ancient murals in Egypt show flying discs in formation. One depicts rays descending onto the heads of priests. The Temple of Abydos has an infamous panel that appears, at first glance, to show a helicopter, a submarine, a spacecraft. Experts say it's a palimpsest, layers of hieroglyphs accidentally overlapping. But your gut says otherwise. In Palenque, King Pakal lies on a slab surrounded by imagery that, again, resembles machinery. In Nazca, Peru, giant lines stretch across the desert, visible only from the sky. One even looks like a runway. Again, scholars say ceremonial, symbolic, coincidence. But again, why from the sky? And what if it wasn't humans they were built for? You think about communication, not language but geometry, symbols, structures. What if pyramids and temples and lines in the earth were not for people? What if they were beacons? What if they were designed to say, we're still here, to something above? Like carving help in giant letters on a beach, waiting for a rescue plane. Or a ship. You shake your head. This is crazy. But then you remember a story, one that gives you chills. In 1561, residents of Nuremberg reported a battle in the sky. Cylindrical ships, spheres, a black spear-shaped craft, all witnessed by hundreds. Drawings were made, pamphlets distributed. It happened. Again in 1566, in Basel. Sky wars, flying lights, people screamed, prayed. Were they hallucinating? Or were they being watched? There's something deeply unsettling about the idea that someone, or something, has always been here, not just occasionally visiting, present, watching as we build, watching as we fall, dropping just enough knowledge to steer us and then pulling back. You imagine aliens not as invaders, but as curators, caretakers of some ancient experiment. Maybe we're the lab rats, or maybe we're the project. A joke bubbles up, nervous and strange. If aliens made us, I hope they kept the receipt. You laugh softly, but the air doesn't join in. You reach a clearing. The stars blaze above like silent eyes. And for the first time you think maybe these gods weren't supernatural. Maybe they weren't gods at all. Just visitors. And maybe, in some cave, deep beneath your feet, there's a chamber filled with records. Maps, names, coordinates, or maybe even warnings. You look around and say aloud, "Are you still here?" And something rustles, just behind the trees. You freeze. That sound behind the trees, it wasn't an animal. It wasn't wind. It was intentional, measured, like something testing how close it can get before you notice. You whisper into the dark, "If you're here, show yourself." Silence. Then the rustling fades. The jungle returns to its regular song. But the feeling in your chest doesn't go away. Tightens just slightly, like a truth hiding behind the leaves. You move slowly now, tracing your steps toward a wall of stone covered in carvings. It's old, crumbling, but not lifeless. And on it is a shape, not a god, not a king, a being, slender, limbs too long, head disproportionately large, sitting, no, piloting something. His hands press forward, its body leans. Below what looks like fire, or energy, or propulsion, you're staring at what conspiracy theorists have called the ancient astronaut. It's the image from Pakal's tomb, only this isn't Palenque. This is something older, more obscure, more hidden. You step back. It's not the only one. All around the chamber, figures are carved into stone. Some resemble humans. Some resemble birds. Some are just strange, like us but not us. Elongated heads, white-set eyes, bulging skulls. This isn't the only place they appear. In Egypt, elongated skulls were reserved for royal imagery. In Paracas, Peru, actual skulls have been unearthed, longer, larger, heavier than standard human skulls, with cranial volume that doesn't match simple head binding. Scientists still debate whether these skulls are evidence of natural variation or cultural manipulation. But the Paracas skulls? They lack the cranial suture lines that should be present in all humans. That's not cosmetic. That's anatomical. Who were they? You bend closer to one carving and whisper, "Were you the ones who built this?" The image stares back, unmoving, unapologetic. Let's talk about anomalies. Around the world, from Malta to Easter Island, cultures have left behind statues, carvings, structures that seem to honor something not entirely human. Big heads, large eyes, limbs not quite right. Are they dreams, symbols, or portraits? You think about Göbekli Tepe, arguably the world's oldest temple, over 11,000 years old. Built before agriculture, before writing, before pottery. And yet, the stone pillars are perfectly cut, aligned, decorated with animals, abstract symbols, and humanoid forms. Mainstream archaeology calls it revolutionary, a symbol of complex culture before cities. But some researchers argue it shouldn't be there. It breaks the timeline. And that's the recurring theme. Something keeps breaking the timeline. Every time we think we've built a neat chronology, a clean story of human progress, something strange appears. Out of place, out of time. A battery in ancient Baghdad. A 2,000-year-old Greek computer, the Antikythera mechanism. Maps from the 1500s showing Antarctica without ice. These aren't fakes. These are real, proven, cataloged, and yet explained away. Accidental, misunderstood, unrelated. You can almost hear the scholars arguing. Scientists still debate whether these artifacts prove lost civilizations or simply highlight gaps in our understanding of history. But that's just it. The gaps are too big. You sit down, letting your fingers rest against the carvings. The stone is cool,
Familiar.
almost comforting, and you start to wonder, maybe it's not that someone visited Earth once. Maybe they never left. Ancient texts hint at this. The Book of Enoch speaks of the Watchers, beings who came from the sky, taught humans metallurgy, astronomy, and more, then were punished for interfering. In the Popol Vuh, Maya texts describe gods who made humans out of maize after failing with mud and wood. The stories vary, but the shape is the same. Visitors come, try to help, make something, leave, or get banished. What if we are the result? A quiet joke drifts in. If aliens made humans, maybe that explains why we glitch out after midnight. You smile, but only briefly, because here's where it gets darker. What if the gods we once worshipped weren't benevolent? The Sumerians described the Anunnaki as demanding. The Aztecs sacrificed to keep the gods fed. The Egyptians feared divine judgment in the afterlife. Why so much fear? What if these ancient gods were just higher beings with agendas, no halos, no harps? Just technology we mistook for magic. Power we mistook for divinity. Control we mistook for love. You look at the wall again, and suddenly, one of the beings carved into the stone doesn't seem neutral anymore. Its eyes are hollow, expressionless, like a lab tech watching test subjects. You whisper, "Were we made? Or modified?" There's no answer. But somewhere behind you, a branch snaps. You turn around. The jungle is quiet. Too quiet. You stand frozen, heart racing. That branch didn't snap by itself. But the jungle holds its breath again, as if erasing the evidence. You take a cautious step forward, crunching leaves beneath your feet, and feel the night watching you. What if you're not just retracing history? What if you're triggering it? As you move deeper through the trees, something begins to emerge through the undergrowth. Ruins, half swallowed by vines and soil. It's not on any tourist map. You run your hand along the edge of a carved stone, and suddenly, pattern snaps into focus. 3 pyramids, not just standing, but aligned in a triangle. Your breath catches. Orion's belt again. It's the 3rd time you've seen it. Giza, Teotihuacan. And now, here. The same stars, the same spatial layout, the same scale. 3 monuments echoing a star pattern so precisely, it almost feels like a message burned into the earth. Why this pattern? Scientists still argue whether these star alignments were symbolic or intentional sky maps for navigation, or something else entirely. You stare up at Orion in the sky. What is it about these 3 stars that demanded duplication? Were they trying to mirror something above, or invite something down? The ancients believed the gods lived among the stars, that death meant return to the cosmos. The pharaohs aligned their tombs to guide their souls back to Orion. The Maya believed their ancestors came from the Pleiades, and would return from the same direction. You step into the center of the triangle. Feels different, still, like a pressure system has collapsed inward. The sound changes. Birds grow quiet. You whisper, "Is this a landing site?" And you laugh nervously. But the question hangs in the air, too specific to ignore. Because you're beginning to see it now. The repetition. Pyramids around the world built to the same design. Star alignments that trace the same constellations. Similar myths of beings who come from above, give wisdom, then disappear. Civilizations that rise rapidly, achieve inexplicable feats, and vanish. What if this isn't a coincidence? What if it's a cycle? You remember Göbekli Tepe, buried on purpose for reasons unknown. His builders vanished. The Olmecs? Gone. The Indus Valley? Gone. Each one reaching for the stars and then gone. What if something happens when civilizations hit a certain threshold of knowledge? What if it's not just rise and fall, but rise, contact, and reset? Your mind reaches toward the concept of a global clock, hidden not in machines but in mythologies. The Maya calendar famously ended a cycle in 2012, sparking panic, jokes, and a flood of documentaries. But they never said it was the end. They said it was a new beginning. What if their calendar wasn't a doomsday countdown, but a marker for when the cycle loops again? You hear an owl call above you, 3 hoots in perfect rhythm, almost like a code. The hair on your arms rises. You walk forward and step onto a flat, smooth surface, stone, polished, and buried beneath the dirt. You scrape away moss to reveal lines, intersecting, geometric, measured. A grid, a design. And suddenly you realize this isn't just a temple floor. It's a blueprint. For what? You close your eyes and breathe slowly. In the darkness behind your lids, the pieces come together. These structures aren't random. They're coordinated, global, like parts of a machine spread across continents. Maybe to harness energy, maybe to transmit signals, or maybe to unlock something. And suddenly, the joke you heard last week isn't funny anymore. Earth isn't a planet. It's a station. You remember the strange magnetic fields around the pyramids, the weird acoustic chambers, the unnatural temperature anomalies, all dismissed by experts, all real. One theory even suggests that the Great Pyramid wasn't a tomb, but a frequency device, that the king's chamber resonates at 432 Hz, considered a natural frequency tied to the harmony of the universe, and that the design itself focuses energy upward like a beam. But a beam to where? And for who? You step off the platform and glance behind you. Nothing. Then again, that's the pattern too. They always come quietly, leave no trace, like smoke through fingers. You crouch by the base of one of the buried pyramids. Its orientation is precise, off from magnetic north, but aligned perfectly with true north, a detail even modern architects sometimes miss. You whisper, "Why so accurate?" And in your mind, the answer echoes, because someone was watching. You think about recent history, the UFO hearings, pilots testifying about flying objects with impossible speeds, government videos confirmed, declassified. We don't know what it is, they say, but they admit it's real. Are they connected? Or are we just starting to reach the same threshold again? You exhale. The jungle doesn't answer, but the pyramid behind you still stands, stone against sky, whispering to the stars above. And somewhere, maybe high above, maybe already here, something listens back. You're starting to lose track of time. Minutes stretch. Hours collapse. The jungle no longer feels like a place, it feels like a veil. And you're walking along the edge of something you're not meant to see. You stumble into a clearing, heart still steady but mind spinning. It's nighttime, and yet the stars overhead shine so brightly, so clearly, you feel like you could pluck one down and hold it in your palm. And maybe someone once did, because as you tilt your head back, something becomes obvious, almost embarrassingly so. The structures beneath your feet, these pyramids, these stones, they're not just aligned with stars. They track them. You've heard of Stonehenge? Sure. But the truth is, almost every ancient culture built structures that aligned with celestial events. Solstices, equinoxes, lunar standstills. These alignments weren't symbolic. They were precise. In Egypt, the temple of Karnak channels sunlight at exact moments of the solar calendar. In Cambodia, Angkor Wat mirrors the path of Venus. In Chichen Itza, the serpent shadow slithers down the pyramid during equinox. Not early, not late. Exactly. How? How did ancient builders, without satellites, telescopes, GPS, know the movements of the stars better than we sometimes do today? Scientists still argue whether these alignments were accidental, ritualistic, or the result of deeply inherited astronomical knowledge. But that last idea, inherited, it lingers, because knowledge like this doesn't just appear. It's taught, or remembered, or passed down. You kneel and brush your fingers across a weathered carving. It shows concentric circles, spirals, stars, a figure pointing upward. You pause. You've seen this symbol before. In petroglyphs, in Australian Aboriginal rock art, in Native American desert carvings. Spirals, circles, celestial paths, they appear everywhere, on every continent, in cultures that never spoke, never met, never traded. How can that be? What is it about the spiral, this curling path upward, outward, that felt so urgent to carve into stone thousands of years ago? You remember the Nazca lines again. Massive spirals in the desert, some dozens of meters across, viewable only from above. Who were they for? You sit in the dirt, the stars reflected in your eyes. Above you, constellations flicker like old memories. The ancients didn't just watch the sky. They communed with it, built for it, aligned to it, believed the stars were alive, conscious, watching. You whisper, were they right? And again, there's no reply. But maybe silence is the answer. You think about the Dogon again, a remote tribe in Mali.
No telescopes.
No written language. And yet, they knew about Sirius B, a companion star invisible to the naked eye. They said it was small, heavy, and orbited Sirius A every 50 years. Science confirmed this in the 20th century. So how did they know? They say the Namo told them. Beings from the stars, amphibious, descended in spinning ships, gave knowledge, left. You smile bitterly. Of course they did. Because that's the story, again and again. Visitors, instructions, departure, and what's left behind. Monuments, star maps, calendars that go on for thousands of years. Tracking eclipses, solstices, Venus cycles, and alignments so complex it takes supercomputers to replicate them. You think about the Temple of Hathor at Dendera in Egypt. Its ceiling contains the famous Dendera zodiac, a map of the heavens, including planets, constellations, and precessional movement. Scholars still struggle to decode all its meaning. But the takeaway is simple. They knew. They knew things that, by all rights, they shouldn't. So you ask yourself, did someone help them? Another joke pops into your head. Ancient aliens were just the original Google, except they didn't charge for premium access. You chuckle, but your fingers tighten around a nearby vine. Because if it's true, if some intelligence shared its knowledge, then why did they stop? Did they lose interest? Did they expect us to figure it out on our own? Or, did something go wrong? Some say the flood stories across cultures are metaphor. Others say they're memory, that something wiped the slate clean, that the knowledge was buried, forgotten, or hidden on purpose, to protect it, or to protect us. You look again at the stars, and for the first time tonight, they don't feel so far away. You can almost sense something behind them, not malevolent, not benevolent, just curious, maybe even waiting, because the sky hasn't changed, the stars haven't moved, but we have. And maybe, just maybe, we're almost ready to listen. You're moving again, but not because you want to. It's as if something is pulling you forward, like a thread tied to your ribs, drawing you deeper into the story. The jungle gives way to stone. The stars above burn brighter than before. Or maybe, you're just noticing them differently now. You find yourself standing before something vast. A dark wall of stone, covered edge to edge in carvings. Glyphs, figures, spirals, stars. But one image dominates. A humanoid figure, arms outstretched, surrounded by smaller beings? Or are they machines? And behind them, rising like a shadow swallowing the sky, is what looks like a pyramid, but it isn't quite. It bends inward. The sides curve. At the top, a circle, not a point. You step closer. The figure's head is elongated, its fingers too long. Not monstrous, not terrifying, just wrong in a way your brain can't file into any known category. It's alien, not in the Hollywood way, but in the quiet, evolutionary, impossibly old way. You press your hand against the stone. It's warm. Then you remember the stories, the ones barely whispered, even among fringe circles. That there are places, chambers, tunnels, vaults, beneath these structures. Locked away, sealed, forgotten, or guarded. They're called by many names. Halls of records, stargates, vaults of knowledge. Hidden repositories left behind by those who came before. Atlantis, Lemuria. The lost lands aren't just myths, they're fragments, crumbs. The parts of the story that survived the fire, the flood, the forgetting. In Egypt, it's said that beneath the Sphinx lies a hidden chamber. Sealed, scanned, denied. In South America, explorers speak of tunnels under Lake Titicaca, lined with markings that match no known culture. In Antarctica, yes, Antarctica, satellite images reveal shapes beneath the ice. Triangular, symmetrical, geometric, not natural, unexplained. Scientists still argue whether these anomalies are natural formations, tricks of light, or the signs of something buried that we've yet to unearth. But you're beginning to understand. The truth doesn't shout. It whispers, and you have to be very, very quiet to hear it. You remember a document, declassified now, describing an ancient artifact of unknown origin, emitting frequencies that interfered with electrical instruments, found in a cave in Siberia, removed, disappeared, mentioned once, then never again. You wonder how many discoveries have been hidden, how many truths have been boxed, locked, and archived in dusty vaults labeled fiction, to protect the world from a question too big to answer. Because here's the danger. If you admit even one of these things is real, just one, you have to question everything. History, religion, science, your own origin. Maybe that's why it's easier to laugh, to call it conspiracy, to roll your eyes and say, "Oh great, another alien story." It's safer to stay in the dark. But what if the dark is where the answers are? You stare at the figure on the wall. Its hand is outstretched, pointing to a star, a very specific star. You recognize it now. It's Sirius, the dog star, the one tied to Egyptian calendars, Dogon prophecy, and even some Native American lore. You remember the strange behavior of Sirius in ancient records. Appearing early, shifting colors, pulsing. Some say it's binary. Some say it's triple. Some say it's not a star at all. You sit beneath the carving, letting your back rest against ancient stone. Your flashlight flickers, and for a second you swear the eyes of the carved figure glow. You blink. It's gone. You exhale and try to laugh, but it comes out shaky. "Okay," you whisper. "Let's say it's true. Let's say they came. Then what? Why leave? Why not reveal themselves again? Maybe they have. Maybe they never stopped." You think of all the modern sightings. More frequent, more complex. Triangles, lights, crafts that defy physics. They don't crash through our skies. They move through them. Slide, glide, vanish. And every government in the world says the same thing now. We don't know what they are. They're not ours. Then whose are they? You remember that scene. Multiple fighter pilots tracking a UAP. Tic-tac shaped.
No exhaust. No winds. No visible propulsión.
And yet it moved at impossible speeds, then stopped, then dropped from 80,000 feet to sea level in seconds. The data doesn't lie. The pilots don't lie. So what does? You close your eyes, and for a moment you see it. Pattern. A map. A story too old for books and too real for legend. Not one event, but a series. A loop. Civilizations rising. Contact occurring. Knowledge shared or seeded. Then silence. A pause. A test. Like the last level of a game, waiting for us to press resume. You feel it now. Not just belief, but recognition. You whisper, "We're almost there, aren't we?" The stars don't blink. But one of them pulses. Once. Then fades. The pulse fades, but it doesn't disappear. It lingers behind your eyelids like an afterimage, like the memory of a flashlight in the dark. You rub your eyes, trying to ground yourself, but everything has shifted. The jungle no longer feels like jungle. The air is thinner, quieter, charged. You've crossed a threshold, and somehow you know it. The carvings behind you, those impossible figures, those celestial markers, they no longer feel like theories. They feel like instructions, like signposts from someone who's been trying to reach us all along. Patient, silent, waiting for us to wake up. You step away from the wall and move through the clearing, past trees that seem older than time. And just ahead, buried under roots and stone, something catches your eye. A circle. No, a disc. It's made of black stone. Obsidian, maybe, but polished so smoothly it reflects the stars above. You lean in. Your face looks back at you, distorted, ghost-like. And behind your reflection, something moves. You spin around. Nothing, of course. But your heart won't slow down. The idea begins to settle in your chest like a truth you've known all along. What if the visitors never left because they were never out there to begin with? What if they've always been here? Not just in ships above the earth, but beneath it. Integrated. Observing from within, not from afar. Many cultures believed in inner worlds. The Hopi spoke of the ant people, beings who lived underground and protected humanity during the great fires of the past. In Tibetan tradition, Shambhala is a hidden city within the earth. The Greeks called it Hades. The Hindus had Padala. Even the Nazis sent expeditions to Antarctica, chasing whispers of a hollow earth, of ancient knowledge buried beneath the ice. You laugh just a little. So now it's aliens and mole people? But the feeling doesn't leave you, because it's not about what lives underground. It's about what's stored there. Scientists still argue whether ancient underground structures were shelters, ceremonial spaces, or something far more advanced, vaults of forgotten technology. And maybe that's why certain governments move so quickly when anomalies are found, why satellite images vanish, why ancient sites are closed for maintenance and never reopened. You walk further, through a tunnel carved into stone. The walls are too smooth, the corners too exact. You reach out to touch them and feel not stone but something more like metal disguised as rock. Cold, unyielding, echoing with a hollow resonance. This isn't natural. Someone built this. You step into the chamber beyond and freeze. The walls shimmer faintly. Symbols you don't recognize flicker in and out like breath on glass. At the center of the room is a raised platform, circular, crystalline, empty. You approach it slowly. It's the kind of space that feels sacred, not in a religious way but in a functional one. A place of purpose, of precision. A control room? Or a throne? You don't sit. You don't speak. You just listen. And in that silence, a memory awakens. Not your own, but one you feel in your blood. A time before memory. A time before speech. A time when sky and earth weren't separate, and knowledge wasn't learned, it was shared. Directly, instantly, like light. And then the chamber begins to hum. Softly at first. A frequency just below hearing. But you feel it. In your chest. In your teeth. The same resonance you felt in the pyramid. The same hum described in ancient texts, in whispered mythologies. A signal. A handshake. You back away slowly, your pulse rising. The platform dims. The symbols fade. And then you understand. It wasn't meant to activate yet. It was testing you. Seeing if you were ready. Not you personally, but us. You step outside back into the cool air. The stars are still there. Still burning silently above. And you begin to wonder, if the entire Earth is a kind of relay, then maybe these sites, Giza, Tikal, Gobekli Tepe, Mohenjo-Daro, Pumapunku, aren't just sacred. They're connected. Nodes in a grid. Parts of a larger mechanism. One that doesn't speak in words, but in alignment. Vibration. Like, maybe we were never meant to just look at the stars. Maybe we were meant to join them. And maybe, just maybe, that's what the ancients were trying to tell us all along. You sit in the dirt, head tilted to the sky. You whisper, "We're almost there, aren't we?" And far, far above, a single light moves, quickly, silently, across the stars, then vanishes. You don't sleep that night. Even as the jungle quiets and the moon casts a silver net over the trees, your mind won't settle. You lie on your back, staring at the stars, replaying everything. The carvings, the vibrations, the alignment, the questions that refuse to let go. You rise before dawn. The world is still. The mist clings to the ground like memory. And you walk half dreaming, half following some invisible thread. Because something still doesn't add up. Not the pyramids. Not the skulls. Not the math. It's the repetition. You think back to the stories. Civilizations that reached great heights, then fell. Egypt, the Maya, the Sumerians, the Indus Valley, Atlantis if you want to go there. All of them advanced in ways we still don't fully understand. And all of them gone. Not slowly, not naturally. Gone like someone pulled the plug. Why? What if there's a pattern? What if there's a threshold, an invisible line we keep approaching? You remember something buried in a documentary once, about how the Maya abruptly abandoned their cities. No mass graves, no signs of invasion,
No pandemic.
they just left. And not just the Maya. Many great cultures fell off the map like whispered words. You walk through the ruins again. Only now you don't see buildings. You see markers, coordinates, symbols left behind not just to honor gods but to warn us. A cosmic do not touch. What if, every time humanity starts to remember, starts to unlock those hidden mechanisms, we get too close to the source? And something intervenes? Scientists still argue whether these sudden collapses were climate-based, economic, or caused by long-forgotten catastrophes. But maybe it wasn't the earth that shut these civilizations down. Maybe it was the sky. You sit on the edge of a stone platform, feet dangling, breath clouding in the cool morning air, and you start to wonder, what if we're doing it again? Suddenly, you're not in the jungle anymore. You're in a city, a skyscraper, a screen glow on your face, satellites blinking overhead, telescopes scanning the void.
Ai deciphering language, genomes.
Frequencies. For the first time since we began building pyramids, we're again at the edge of something enormous. And the signs are there. Government programs admitting UFOs exist, now called UAPs. Military encounters documented, but left unexplained. Astronomers spotting interstellar objects like Oumuamua that don't behave like comets or asteroids. Some even suggest it's artificial. Harvard's Dr. Avi Loeb says it openly. Others whisper it. You think about how quickly the narrative is changing. From ridicule to research. From denial to disclosure. But why now? What's changed? Maybe we've crossed the threshold again. Maybe this is the moment. The point in the cycle where things converge. Ancient knowledge. Modern technology. Cosmic attention. And you, sitting here, between the echoes of the past and the hum of what's coming next. You dig your fingers into the dirt. Feel the earth. It's easy to forget in all the theories that you're still human, still small, still one person on a giant rock, spinning through space. And yet, you feel connected to something vast, something intelligent, not religious, not political, something older than language and deeper than numbers, something that's been trying to talk to us not with words, but with stone, with stars, with vibration. And maybe, just maybe, some of us are finally starting to hear it. You rise as the sky begins to lighten. The first rays of sun split the trees. The birds start to sing again. You look down at the pyramid one last time. Its shadow stretches west. And for a second, it almost looks like a wing. You whisper, "Are we ready this time?" No answer. Just the sun. Warm and blinding. You walk into the sunlight like someone emerging from a cave. But the world doesn't feel the same anymore. It's brighter, yes, but sharper too. Like you're seeing through a filter that's just been pulled away. You blink slowly, your mind catching up to what your gut already knows. You've seen too much to go back now. And the questions that once whispered now shout. Who built the pyramids? Why are there the same shapes? Triangular, precise, astronomically aligned from South America to Egypt to Southeast Asia. Why do cultures with no connection build the same things, tell the same stories, fear and revere the same sky? You think of the faces you saw carved in stone. Not gods, not animals. Something other. The joke you once laughed at now feels like foreshadowing. What if the ancient aliens were the original influencers? You smile, but it's a hollow smile. Because deep down, you're starting to accept something wild. Not because you want to, because the evidence keeps stacking. You sit under a fig tree and open your notebook. You list what you've seen. Identical pyramid structures across continents. Star alignments with Orion, Sirius, Pleiades. Myths of sky gods that descend, teach, leave. Underground chambers with unknown origins. Skulls that don't match Homo sapiens' anatomy. Temples functioning as star clocks, energy conductors. Civilizations disappearing without trace, always after a sudden peak. You pause. Draw a line under your notes. Then write one more thing. It's a pattern. Scientists still argue whether this pattern is evidence of extraterrestrial involvement or simply the result of convergent evolution in human civilization. But let's be honest. How many coincidences does it take before it's no longer coincidence? You flip to a blank page and write 3 words. They were here. You sit with it for a while. And then, your pen moves again almost on its own. They might still be. It's not paranoia. It's clarity. Because if beings once came here, beings with the knowledge to build in stone, encode in stars, and influence biology, why assume they left? Maybe we were never meant to see them in the open. Maybe they only reveal themselves when the time is right. Or when we are. You remember something you once heard. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. What if the gods weren't gods? What if the magic was just misunderstood science? You close your notebook and look up. The clouds shift. The light changes. And just like that, you remember where this all began. A question. A simple one. Why did the Maya and Egyptians both build pyramids? But now you realize that question was a doorway. It wasn't just about architecture. It was about a message. And now you see the shape of that message. Not a sentence. Not even a word. A feeling. A nudge. Like a cosmic hand on your shoulder. Saying, keep going. You feel it now. We've almost connected the dots. We've almost reopened the file that was sealed long before we knew what history even was. The next step isn't just to ask whether they were real. It's to ask, what do they want now? You hear the wind stir the leaves above you. Something shifts in your peripheral vision. Not a threat, just movement. You stand, and you feel for the first time that you're not alone. Not in a ghost story kind of way. In a watched kind of way. Observed. Evaluated. Your entire species. And maybe, just maybe, we're being given a final exam. One last test to see if we're ready for the next chapter. A new dawn. Or a reset. You step back onto the trail, eyes wide open. And somewhere above, beyond clouds, beyond gravity, beyond what we call real, something watches back. The trail winds beneath your feet, half covered by roots and time. The jungle is thinning now. You're approaching the edge, not of the forest, but of something deeper. A boundary. The place where the known ends and the other begins. You step through a final curtain of trees and into an open space. And there it is. One last pyramid. It's smaller than the others, but different, sharper, cleaner, untouched almost as if it's new.
No viñes. No cracks.
Just pristine stone reflecting the rising sun. You approach slowly. There's something carved into its base, lines, circles, geometry too perfect to be decorative. It looks like circuitry, or a star map, or both. Your hand brushes the stone, and for the first time, you don't feel alone. Not metaphorically, literally. Presence. Quiet. Watching. You don't see it. You don't hear it. But you feel it, like pressure on the inside of your skull. Not threatening. Not demanding. Just awake. You whisper, is this what we were meant to find? The air tightens around you. A pulse, like a low-frequency beat, passes through your chest. The kind of sensation that makes no sound, yet rearranges your bones. It's familiar. The same resonance you felt at Giza, Tikal, in the chamber below. This is the end of the trail, and the beginning of something else. You step back and sit in the grass, eyes wide, mind racing. Everything you've seen, everything you've followed, it wasn't random. It was guided, as if the monuments themselves were breadcrumbs leading to this point. As if someone or something wants us to remember. You think back to all the coincidences, the alignments, the skulls, the gods who weren't gods, the civilizations that rose, then vanished. And suddenly you see it. Earth isn't just a planet. It's a puzzle. And we've been solving it piece by piece for thousands of years. Not with science alone. Not with religion alone. But with a strange mix of myth, math, and memory. And now here you are, at the center. The final question echoing in your head. What happens when we solve it? Scientists still argue whether humanity is approaching a technological singularity, a spiritual awakening, or an existential collapse. But the evidence suggests something else. A return, not of gods, not of aliens, but of memory, of a version of us that knew more, saw more, was more, and left clues behind to find the way back. You glance up one last time. The sky is pale blue now, but Orion still lingers, faint in the west. Watching, waiting. You open your notebook. Write one final line. They left us a map. Not to find them, but to find ourselves. You exhale. And just as you begin to stand, you hear it. Not from behind. Not from above. From inside. A voice. Not in words. In understanding. You're ready. And then it's gone. But you feel different. You feel returned. Like waking up from a long, beautiful, strange dream and realizing it wasn't a dream at all. It was real. All of it. The question now isn't are they real? It's are you ready to remember? The journey is nearly over now, and your breath is slower. The images from tonight settle like sediment at the bottom of a still pond. Clear, soft, quiet. You've walked among stone giants and stared into the eyes of carvings older than time. You've felt the rhythm of the earth through chambers that hum. You've touched the fingerprints of civilizations lost not just to history, but to memory. And you've seen the pattern. Everywhere the same echoes. Pyramids shaped like prayers. Stars that never stopped calling. Myths that might not be myths at all. You've followed the trail. Through jungles and deserts. Through myths and science. Through fear and wonder. And now, in this final moment, you're not afraid anymore. Because even if we've been visited, even if we were taught or guided or watched, we were never abandoned. The message was never they are coming. It was always we are becoming. And now, as the world slowly wakes and morning birds stretch their songs across the sky, your eyes grow heavier. The stars have faded, but they're not gone. They're just waiting, like they always have. So let them wait. Let them whisper to you in dreams. Let them hum in the stone and call in the quiet places where light doesn't quite reach. You've earned your rest now. Sleep gently, traveler of the old questions. The universe will still be here when you wake.